Okay. Hi, Ashley.
Hi. Yes.
Megan, nice to meet you. Come
Nice
on
to
in and have a
meet
seat.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in today.
Yeah,
Are you having a good summer so far?
I am. Thank you. How about you?
Busy.
Yeah.
Any pleasure, or is it all business for you?
A little bit of pleasure. We're planning
Nice.
a trip to the beach.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming in today. As I'm sure you're aware, we're interviewing for a high school language arts teacher. You were aware.
Yes.
We're hiring a language. Okay, perfect. Well, good morning, and thank you for coming in today. I'm excited to learn more about you and your teaching philosophy. I have a series of questions to help me get to know you better and to understand how you might fit into our school community, and for you to make sure that we are a good fit for you. So first of all, I want to start with your background. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what inspired you to become a language arts teacher?
Sure. Okay. So I was an English major at SFA and I loved it. And I went on and got my master's directly after that in English as well. And my plan at that time was to go on in the world of academia and probably become a professor, but life happened to me and instead I got married, and my husband's career did not allow me to go anywhere for PhD school. So I was left wondering what to do with my wonderful degrees in English that I loved so much. So I decided to go ahead and just apply for a teaching job at Lufkin High School. I got the job, and as soon as I started, I fell in love with it. This is really such a job that suits my strengths. It suits what I love to do. I love the kids. So I really love being a language arts teacher. This is going to be my 14th year next year. I have taught primarily high school level. So I've taught 9th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. I did 1 year of 7th grade, wasn't my favorite. I have taught dual credit classes. I've taught remedial classes. I have been the team leader. I'm currently a part-time instructional coach for my department. So in terms of the English language arts world, I've really gotten my hand into a lot of the different aspects of that field.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your teaching philosophy.
Okay.
How would you describe your teaching philosophy, and how it shapes your approach to teaching language arts?
Okay. So I kind of look at it as the language arts teacher. It's my job to provide and facilitate various experiences that will help develop a student's literacy. Okay, so that means that I'm choosing literature and designing assignments and assessments that allow that student to interact with rich texts and also develop diverse texts. And my job is mostly facilitator, right? So that encompasses curriculum development, as well as all these other pieces of like classroom management and all the things, differentiation tools. All those tools in my toolbox help me facilitate the students on their literacy journey. And I also assess and give feedback and teach the skills that need to be taught for them to go on that journey. So when I think big picture, my philosophy of teaching, it's more of facilitator than someone who's just giving you my knowledge.
You're not the sage on the stage.
I don't want to be the sage on the stage. I want them to grapple with literacy. And I think I haven't taught other subjects, but I think that would apply to everyone. It's just that all the other subjects really. But in my world of literacy growth, I don't know how else a student can grow in literacy besides just being richly engaged. So that's my goal.
Wonderful. Right. Let's talk about curriculum
Okay.
development. So I know you mentioned developing curricula for your students. So can you give me an example of a language arts lesson that
Okay.
you've developed, and how did you ensure that it met the educational standards while engaging them?
Okay. So, one of the things that I did a few years ago was I piloted our college prep course. So, this was a class for students who were seniors who had not passed the TSI for English Language Arts. So, we had an agreement with SFA that if they passed my class, they would not have to take remedial courses if they went to SFA. But I was also trying to prep them for the TSI. So, not only and it was their English 4 class.
Forgive my ignorance. What is the TSI?
Oh, the TSI is a college, it's a college placement test.
Okay.
So they have to take the TSI before college to determine whether they're college ready. And if they're not college ready, they have to take remedial courses in college.
Okay, thank you.
The TSI is also a factor in accountability. So it's important for our school to have our ratings that are given by TEA. It has to do with points, all of that stuff. So it gets complicated on that end, but so I had to develop a curriculum that not only would hit the TEKS, but also would do TSI prep and satisfy what SFA wanted. So there were a lot of criteria that I was bound to, and it was a skills-heavy class. I mean, the TEKS are heavy, it's skills anyway, but what I was trying to build was these were kids who were missing skills. That's why they weren't passing that test, right? Many of them also still hadn't passed STAR. So it was that level. But I did design one unit that I thought was really engaging, that the students got into, and that was, we did a whole unit on sports. Okay, and I'm not a sports girl, so this was a little bit outside my thing, but the way we went about it was I was interested in a video I had seen about how in the next Olympics we were getting a new sport, and it was breakdancing. And I said to myself, that does not sound like a sport. And I showed it to my students, and I engaged them in a conversation about whether or not they thought breakdancing was a sport. So they got kind of interested in that, and I showed them the video, and they thought the breakdancing was cool, and they were into it, and we talked about, well, why should that be in the Olympics? And they went back and forth, and everyone was, sharing their opinions. And so then I shared with them other sports that are questionable, such as competitive eating, Rubik's cubing, right? Like all these different activities that people were trying to claim were sports. Oh my goodness. They had so many opinions about whether these things were sports. So it really was a good entrance for a lot of different things that we did with it. So I had them read other people's arguments about whether Rubik's cubing is a sport or competitive eating is a sport or whatever. They had to pick a sport that they were going to focus on. And they had to agree or disagree with the author of the text. So through that, we hit, a lot of these TEKS about argumentation, as well as the writing skills that they needed and all of the other things. And then they had to present their opinion in the end. This was a definition paper, basically, because they had to develop a definition about what is a sport and then apply the definition to what they had learned about this activity to say whether it was or was not a sport. Then they shared theirs with each other, and we culminated in a debate activity that they were really interested in. I thought it worked out, and we really were able to hit a lot of the required pieces.
I feel like there's probably a lot of passion in those debates.
Well, and there was, and we included other things that some of them were involved in, like golf. Some people don't think golf is a sport.
My husband has this argument about disc golf.
See? Does he think it's a sport?
He does.
People are passionate about this stuff. So if you can find something that they're interested in and passionate about, hitting the TEKS and the skills and the standards comes easy because there's so much you can do with it. So Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Let's move on to classroom management.
Yes.
What strategies do you use for classroom management, and how do you handle disruptive behavior?
Okay. Well, first of all, classroom management is not okay. I have a pretty good level of classroom management. And I think that's because I'm respectful to my students. I treat them like people. Okay. I make my expectations clear so they're never wondering what's okay. And also, I think if you have an engaging curriculum and you're, I don't want to say just keeping them busy, but keeping them actually engaged in what's going on in class, you're not going to have the level of disruption that others might. Because if they respect you and you respect them, that eliminates a lot of it right there, I think. And then the level of engagement, I'm not giving them the opportunity to get caught up in whatever, right? So, or to get distracted and to get on to doing other things. So those right there are preventative measures. So I think if you have the expectations, the level of respect, and the engaging curriculum, it's not going to be a major issue for you. But of course, there are always going to be those dingbats who come and they have their own ideas about what to do in class, right?
They are never absent.
Nope, they're always there and they've always got something to do. Okay, so my method pretty much is I want to figure out why this is happening, okay? Because a behavior is an indicator that there's something else. So if they are bored, I need to know that, right? If they are not understanding what's going on, that could be a reason for misbehavior. If there is a social element going on in my class between this person and this person, I need to know that. So I will start investigating. And that will definitely involve talking to the student. I will talk to other teachers sometimes to figure out, how they're doing in their class, if we can find common trends about what might be triggering a misbehavior, or if they're behaving in that class and not my class, what's the difference? So that can be really helpful. Parents can be really helpful in giving insight. Sometimes they'll say, oh, yes, he has started a new medication, or she stays up late all night talking to her boyfriend, and that's why she's sleeping and not participating. So I think figuring out the root problem, and then you can go from there and address it. I don't get into arguments with students. I'm very level, I'm very calm. They know that. I rarely have to raise my voice. So I think it's just figuring it out and going from there. It's the way that I pretty much handle. I will ask the kid maybe to step outside if he's being really disruptive, or she, and but it's never going to be me screaming at them, me mad at them, or any of that.
So what would that look like if you did get to, if the situation escalated to the point that you did feel it necessary to remove the student and ask them to step into the hallway? What kind of time frame are we looking at for when you go to the student and address the behavior privately? What does that
It's
look
not
like?
going to be long. So I'll get the class to a point where they can function for, get them doing something, because I don't want them to be focused on that either. So I'll just keep going, not as if this is not an issue. Keep going until we reach a point where I can just step into the hallway, and usually at that point, the person in the hallway is either sorry and ready to talk about it, or they're so mad that they're fuming, and we can say either call in a counselor, or you need to go to a cool off spot, or why don't you go to the bathroom and splash your face with water, and come back and we'll talk it out. But the hallway, I don't do that a lot. That's rarely. I don't really like putting kids in the hallway because I don't like having unsupervised children anywhere, period. But I will, on rare occasions, do that just to remove a serious disruption. And I may also call down and say, hey, I've got so-and-so in the hallway. If a principal is available, or a counselor, she's really upset. Because like I said, my vision of the school is we're all working together, right? And I'm not gonna release a kid out into the wild and not tell anybody, and that, that's not productive. So I'm gonna de-escalate as much as possible and keep things low until we can resolve it.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Moving on to differentiation of instruction. How do you differentiate instruction to meet the diverse needs of your students?
Okay, so differentiation. First of all, I recognize, and we all know, there are certain groups who have to be differentiated for. So my EB students, people with individualized learning plans, IEPs, my 504 people, GT students, all of these unique needs are going on in the classroom all the time, and some of them have legal requirements. So I always make sure that I'm abiding by anything set by law, right? The paperwork. Okay, so that's done, whether it's shortened assignments or extended time or whatever. I also will I like to offer choice. So if there are maybe different texts they can choose to read, possibly different reading levels, I might say, this is the challenge text. If you feel up for it, go for it. And I might say to somebody else, hey, I want you to try this one because I know that they're on a lower reading level. So having those different options there can let me differentiate and also let the students almost self-differentiate to their needs. I'm a classroom, I work the room, okay? So you will rarely find me just sitting at my desk while the kids are working. So that's another way that I really keep a thumb on who needs help. So I'll work the room and I'll go desk to desk, check on kids, how are they doing? And at that point, I can do a lot of the differentiation too in terms of scaffolding. Or modifying assignments as needed. So I might see that this guy is working really hard, but he's only done 1 out of 10, right? And say, hey, you know what? Let's take out numbers 4 through 6. Okay, done. Or I might give someone a sentence stem who seems to be struggling. Or I might do an extension for this group over here who finished early. Okay, I'm gonna add a challenge question for you guys. So I think just by being intentional, working the room, I can do a lot of that on site. Some of it takes planning, right? Because I need to know in advance what would be a good extension for this, or I have to prepare the choice passages, but then it can happen more easily in the room.
Thank you. When it comes to assessment, I know you're assessing as you go through the room, as you're working the room. What other methods do you use to assess student learning, and how do you provide that feedback for them?
Assessments, okay. So,
not necessarily assessments, not necessarily tests, but
okay,
what forms of assessment? And it might be assessments that on paper or online, but it could also be your observations, things like any assessment.
Okay. Well, so we do have the assessments that we have to give, basically, the unit tests, benchmarks, all of that stuff. But I think sounds like you're asking more about the formative assessments. So, the working the room is one thing that I always do. I will ask for exit tickets sometimes, tell me one thing you learned and one question you still have. Just something quick can give me a lot of feedback. I will survey the students formally or informally. A lot of times I'll do, tell me on a scale of 1 to 5 how you feel about positives now that we've had this lesson. 5 is I'm an expert and 1 is I don't know what they are still, and so they'll show me a number and I'm okay, we're doing this again tomorrow, kind of thing. Other assessments, how do I give the feedback as they go? I'm constantly reading things for them and giving them verbal feedback as well as written. So if they turn in an assignment, I will not give it back to them with a 92 on it, the top, and that's it, right? It's going to have a question or some sort of indication of how they could have improved this, what the next step is. And I do have them keep trackers, so like for their writing assignments, so they can see how they're doing on each aspect of the essay. And so they are getting that feedback in a way and documenting it in a way that is trackable and useful for them. Did that answer your question? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Very well
Okay.
answered. I think so often people, when they hear assessment, they think of a summative, but I think my question was more about how do you, as the instructor, assess their concept attainment and
Right.
things like, so yes.
Well, and then besides the unit tests, I'm also doing my own assessment assignments, right? So, and those can look a lot of different ways. So it's not always just a test. There's writing assignments. They can, one time we will make an infographic or, so varied products are another thing that I always make sure to do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Moving on to technology integration. How do you integrate technology into your language arts lessons?
Okay, well, I mean, in this day and age, there's just technology everywhere. It feels like it's at our fingertips. So we have a lot of resources at the district I'm in right now that I have put to use, such as we have No Red Ink, which is a grammar program. So there are lots of, like any grammar or, usage or convention that I'm going over in class, there will be individualized assignments that they can go on and do. So if we're doing commas with coordinating conjunctions, boom, here you go. And it'll give them an assignment, they do it, and then if they didn't do well on it, it extends, like technology's so smart. It does it for you in a way, so, and then I can look at all their results and see what we need to keep working on. So that's been cool and really handy, and I actually like it for some reason.
Sounds very intuitive.
It is. It's like an intuitive program. And then before they start it, they take a survey with all their favorites. So it'll write sentences about like their favorite TV show or something, and they think it's funny. I've used Mimbean, which is a really good vocabulary building program. We use Common Lit Pro, which is articles and questions, sort of STAR style online, which is good since the STAR test is all online. So we want them reading and responding to questions online frequently. So I'll use different things in class. Like there's a website I just learned about that I want to start using more called myshortanswer.com, where there's a question and then the students all write a response, and then it's anonymous, but they give feedback to each other's responses. So I'm always on the lookout for cool and useful new things I can integrate. I use Canvas. I post all the assignments on Canvas for kiddos who miss school. That's been really handy. So, but I'm always open to learning more new cool technology. But I'm also a fan of paper. So I really like paper, and they know that. I'm kind of the handout queen. But I try to balance that.
I think you
technology
can't go whole hog on one or the other.
Right.
I think balance is important.
Yes, exactly.
Balance is important. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned the STAR test being online. Are you accustomed to or familiar with online testing for summative assignments?
Yes. So we use DMAC at the district I'm in right now. So I have learned over the past couple of years very well how to build assessments in DMAC. And I'm kind of actually the go-to person. So if people want to build an assessment in DMAC, they can ask me. So yes, and there are the new question types in STAR, and so I've learned how to replicate those in DMAC in a way that can get us very similar results,
So if you were selected for this position, we do use Eduphoria.
Okay.
Eduphoria has capability to create those STAR-like questions,
Okay.
the new item types. And we do offer training. I've got a training coming up next week called DataWise 101 that will be available to attend via Zoom. If you would be interested in learning more about that, would you be willing to participate in trainings prior to the beginning of school so that you can familiarize yourself with Eduphoria?
Sure, yeah. And I have no problem learning new programs, so that would be great.
Good to hear.
Yeah.
When it comes to collaboration with your colleagues, can you describe a time when you collaborated with other teachers or staff to enhance student learning? Doesn't have to necessarily be other teachers, any other staff to enhance student learning.
Okay. Well, most of my teaching career I've been on teams. Not all the time. Like the TSI class was just me. The college, dual credit classes were just me. But other than that, I've constantly been working on teams, which is a good thing and a bad thing. I think, I enjoy both. So I think that's great that I've had both experiences. I'm good at working on teams. I love collaborating with people. I think it makes a better curriculum in the end, because the more minds, the better, right? Like we get all these different ideas and we can really work together to determine what's best. So a time when I worked to improve student learning, I feel like it's hard to pinpoint one because that's what I do all day, every day, right? But
maybe your favorite experience.
Okay,
working with others to enhance learning.
I did not enjoy teaching 7th grade much, but one thing that I really did like about teaching 7th grade was that the students were on teams, so it was cross-curricular. So the science, social studies, math, and me, we shared the same kids. And so that was really good because let's say, this student is having trouble really focusing in my class. We could team up and share ideas so easily and even set up situations where let's just have her come to your 4th period class. When this, she'll be able to focus better because it'll be after lunch. And then, so we were able to make changes for student learning in a non-conventional sense, in a way that really helped. Another thing is our instructional coach before me was really good about teaming up with us to look at data. So that was a great situation of working with another staff member who could help us really pinpoint what the data was saying and what that might imply or suggest about how we needed to change the instruction. So, like I said, there are so many, it's hard to pinpoint, but those are 2 that I think were really, really helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about challenges.
Okay.
Describe a challenging situation that you faced in the classroom and how you handled it. And if you would handle it differently now, how would you handle it differently?
Okay. So, I had a very challenging situation last year. So, I mentioned before, these past 2 years I've been half-time instructional coach and half-time in the classroom teaching English 1. Okay. We had one of our English 1 teachers actually get fired in November. So they said, "Oh, Misty, you have 3 periods free. You will take over her classes." But let me tell you that this woman ran her classroom like a nightclub. Something like that. I mean, it was, you go in, the lights are low, there's music playing, kids sitting on each other on the floor, very, very, very different from how I expect my classroom to look. So I accepted the challenge begrudgingly, but I did it, and it was not easy to institute my expectations when something had already been established by another teacher. And it caused, like, I just had to make my expectations very clear. And basically, I knew that I was preparing this group for a teacher who was yet to be hired. Okay, so I knew this wasn't, the goal was to hire someone to take over. But I had to take this group and turn them into something that we could, in good confidence, hand over to a teacher. You know, like, we don't want to hire a new teacher and they come in and there's all kind of shenanigans going on, right? Right? No. So I made my expectations very clear. I did pick my battles, you know, not sitting on. I made one of my expectations was everyone sits in a desk, and amazingly, that was very hard for them. So I didn't, you know, even have extreme expectations.
They took flexible seating to another level.
They had some ideas. Okay, so I, you know, but I expected them to do their work, and we were not going to give up the learning. So I made my expectations very clear, and I also really tried, and I mentioned this earlier too, even though I had to be stern, I also made sure I was very respectful. It wasn't their fault, honestly, what happened to them, right? And the way that they were allowed to be in the room. So I tried to be very respectful of them. They hated me, but I worked with that. I'm not used to being hated. I always have great relationships with my students because I come in and they know from day one, and we go from there, right? But in this case, they did eventually come around to me in the end after they realized that I wanted them to be successful and I wasn't going anywhere, right? I'm here for y'all. Here's what we have to do. We're going to knock this out. My expectations of you are here, and you're going to meet them. And so that was really, really hard. Now, if I had to do it differently, it would probably be my own mental mindset that I changed, because I was pretty upset about having to take over those classes. But now looking back, I realize if I were the principal, I would have done the same thing. You know, I mean, it's just something that had to be done. And I would try to have a more positive outlook on, and maybe put a more positive spin on the experience for myself, and look at it more as an opportunity than as something that I was being forced to do. But I don't think, and I hope the students didn't see that coming from me. I don't think they did, because they thought I was happy to be there, but deep in my heart, I was not. But so I would really work on that next time.
Thank you for that reflective answer. Yeah. When it comes to engaging parents and guardians, how do you typically communicate and engage with parents or guardians regarding their child's progress and behavior?
Okay, yeah, parents are my partners. So my perspective is the parent and I want the same thing. We want their student to be successful. So I will call in a parent at any time. Really, I spend a lot of time communicating with parents. Sometimes for good things they do. Sometimes when things are just, on the edge. Sometimes when I notice a change in their student. Hey, I've noticed that so-and-so has been really sleepy lately. Is everything okay? Just whatever. But I really have not, I have found that those parents appreciate the reaching out, and really 90% of the time they have my back. So I'm constantly texting them. I've got them ready to go. And so that has been, I think if a student's at risk in any way, that can really improve their chances. If they're at risk of failing, parents can come in and have my back, right? They don't always, but they want to. They will if they can. that's my perspective. Once in a blue moon, you get the one who doesn't want to help or really can't help, and that's okay. But like I said, I view them as my partners, so it's worked out so far. Yeah.
When we like to do a lot of professional development in-house. We often have PD days where we ask teachers and other instructional leaders, not just admin. We don't like to pay people to come in and train our people. We feel like we have some of the most highly qualified educators around, so let's really utilize those. So we are very heavy on PD, but we do try to make sure that it's relevant and if respectful of your time as well. But how do you currently stay on top of educational trends and improve your teaching practices?
Well, I am a studier. I'm constantly reading things. I love my groups on Facebook who are constantly posting articles about education that I can get into and even communicate with them. I do try to, I'm a member of the TCT ELA, the English Language Arts Association in Texas. So I get those publications and I'm constantly reading those and trying to find people who will talk to me about them. I do try to go to the conference if I can get permission and money to go. I love doing that. So I've also started like book clubs with other educators.
Sorry.
So that's really cool because that gives us a way to share what we've been learning with each other. So one time, I asked other English teachers if they would like to be in a study club with me, and a few of them did want to. So we would bring an article and discuss it, or we read a book one time, and so I'm just always seeking out ways. I want to grow. I have to. I'm inquisitive. I've always been curious. I've always been a learner. Just because I'm the teacher now doesn't mean I'm gonna stop learning. So I actively seek out. I'm interested in research and new theories. So I would love the PD that's going on in your district and would look forward to participating in those.
How comfortable would you be if asked to not only participate, but to take on a leadership role and to help lead a PD?
Ooh, I would love that. Actually, I did lead, we had at the beginning of a school year rotating sessions, like professional development sessions, and they asked me to lead one over a classroom strategy. So I did one over, have you seen the hexagons? Okay, so you cut out a bunch of hexagons out of paper and you have them write different things on the sides of the hexagons, and then it's a connection making activity. And so it's a really easy one to use in the classroom, to connect ideas that you've discussed or ideas from class to class or text to text or person to person even, So I did it was short, a 15-minute professional development, no, it wasn't 15 minutes, I'm sorry, what am I saying? 45-minute professional development session over the hexagon activity, and that went great. So I've also, as an instructional coach, I don't host many PD sessions, but I'm constantly doing professional development with my teachers.
Right.
More one-on-one, reaching their personal goals in the classroom. I would be very comfortable and excited about the opportunity to do more school-wide professional development.
Wonderful. That's what we like to hear. With regard to inclusion and equity, how do you promote inclusion and equity in your classroom? We have a very diverse student body, students from all different areas of the world, all different backgrounds, all different ability levels. So how do you promote inclusion and equity in your classroom?
Right. Okay. Well, as a literature teacher, I do always have to keep my eye on the texts, right? So I make sure that we have diverse texts that we're working with and that the ideas we're exploring are diverse. And hopefully the students would be able to identify with some of the texts that we're teaching. I think that grades can be an equity problem. And so I do prefer to use standards-based grading, which I think promotes equity because it eliminates some of the outside factors in grading, such as late work, right? So we know that some students in our districts don't have supportive families. Some students in our districts are working jobs at night or have to take care of their siblings. They can't do their homework. This is at its root, it's not an academic problem, it's more of an equity problem if I grade those things, right? So I found that standards-based grading helps with the equity in that way. I like to see diversity in advanced classes, so I'm always keeping my eye out for kids who may have been overlooked for more advanced courses or activities, try to scoop them into some UIL events or encourage them to take advanced English next year, So I think it's just more a mindset and an awareness, and if you keep your eyes open and you've got your eyes on the kids, you can help a lot.
Speaking of literature,
Okay.
what are some of your favorite pieces of literature to teach and why?
Oh my goodness. Okay. It's like asking an artist what's their favorite color. You need all of them. You can't just pick one. But okay, I'll try. So this past year, oh my goodness. So I wasn't even sure if I was going to or should teach it, but I did Romeo and Juliet, and it was by far my students' favorite thing we read this year.
Really?
I know. I was so surprised. It's not really my favorite, but they got so into it. And so, they were just into the characters. They were into the language. They wanted to try to read it. Oh my gosh, everything was so dramatic, which they just loved. Yeah, they were really into it. So that one was really fun this year. We did, we went through and analyzed it. It was pretty, in depth with at least the big important scenes. So they did a lot of work on it, but they were into it, so it didn't feel like that to them. And then at the end, it was really fun. I had them pick a character, and they had to make a mask that represented the character, okay? And then we had a masquerade ball, just like the Capulets did, okay? And they had to be their character, and they had questions they would have to ask the other characters and like a little checklist. So it would be like, find Tybalt and ask him how he felt when he saw Romeo at the Capulet's party. So they had to, oh my gosh, they had a blast with it. Okay, other texts that I love, I really like Frankenstein. It's not really a freshman text, but there's so much you can talk about with it. One of my other favorites I've done is Their Eyes Were Watching God. So Neil Hurston was really good one time I did with my juniors. In case you think I'm only about classics, I'm not. I always encourage, I scoop in the contemporary and young adult literature through choice more often. So I'm pretty consistently have them doing independent reading assignments, but I really loved a book club project we did last year. So I picked several good YA texts and had them choose one and work with it in a group. So I don't know if I would say that was my favorite literature, but it was one of my favorite literature assignments because when they chose it, they felt really invested in it, and it worked really well.
Excellent idea.
Yeah.
All right. My last question for you is, how do you see yourself contributing to our school community beyond the classroom?
Okay. Some of the things I have done outside of the classroom over the years include, I almost always work at graduation. I love working at graduation. It's my favorite thing to do. But I have been a UIL coach. I did literary criticism. I started an environmental action club at Lufkin High School called the Green Team. That was good. I have, basic level, I always try to go to games and performances, be there, visible, support the kids that way. I am planning to, or I've been asked to. Now, if I get this job, I won't do it. But I can do it here, though, is start our National English Honor Society. It's sort of lapsed at our school, and we would like to get that going again. So I like doing things after school and getting involved with the kids in other ways besides just the classroom. I think it makes a big difference.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any questions for me about the school or the position?
Yes, I do. Let me think here. Okay. So, how much freedom do your teachers have in curriculum?
There is some autonomy. I
Okay.
don't want you to think that we're not all in lockstep. We do have a scope and sequence
Okay.
to make sure that all of the content is covered, all the standards are covered at the same time, because if we have students with schedule changes, it's important that if they leave your classroom and go to Miss Smith's classroom, that the same content is being covered. They're not missing
True.
things
Okay.
in a schedule change. So we want everyone to be working at the same pace. We have common engaging activities that are decided upon by the team. So the language arts team will, by grade level, determine what are the engaging activities for this unit of study. And if you want to do extra engaging activities, you're free to do so. But as a team, you've decided that these are the three
Okay.
engaging activities that will be common. And then again, if a student has to transfer or get a schedule change, there are common assignments as well. So they're not going from your class to Miss Smith's and having no grades. They've done the same big three activities in your class that her students have done. So they're not losing ground. They're not losing assessment ground with regard to their grades and things like that. So makes it a very easy transition for the students, because it's already going to be an adjustment, getting a new teacher and new classmates and all those things.
Okay.
So there is autonomy, but there's also that collaboration, and so it's a nice balance of the two.
Okay, that's good. Let's see. What is your school's philosophy about data and testing?
I am a data junkie.
Okay.
I like it a lot. I am a big believer that knowledge is power, and how we assess our students and analyze that data helps to drive our instruction. I am not a fan of what we like to say is admiring the data. I don't want to just take the assessments and then put the data on the wall and, oh yeah, looky there. They did not do well in that TEAG. We need to know why. We need to know what was it. How do we best reteach that? Are there students that are falling behind? Because students can be perfectly engaged and appear to be understanding things but be lost. And so how we catch that is with the data. So we really do a lot of data analysis. I train my teachers on data analysis because it's not enough to just admire the data. It's important to use the data to drive your instruction and to meet kids where they are. And if you don't assess them, you don't know where they are. So we are big on data, but we don't just throw you to the wolves. We do a lot of training on that aspect of education.
Okay. When do you think you'll make a decision about this job?
I'd like to have a decision made within the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
We may call you in for a follow-up interview, which would be with an interview committee. And if that is to take place, that will be in the next week.
Okay.
Okay, well,
All right.
thank you so much for your time and your thoughtful responses. I really do appreciate it, and I'll be in touch.
Thank you.
You have a great day.
You too.